moving forward. So it will be looking at, that's why we wanted to have you see the specific definition of what's considered close contact, because that will be the use in situations where we have a positive student or adult and we need to do contact tracing. And that won't change no matter what the guidelines are for distancing and all of that.
Tom, before you move on to the next slide, can you just explain to the board the protocol, the procedure that's in place when you, the district, is notified of a positive student or staff member?
So
that comes through the nurse's office, correct?
yes, so it's taken care of by the, so we were really directed by the Ulster County Department of Health that really they did not have the capacity to do all that contact tracing themselves. So it was really handed back over to all the school districts in Ulster County. So when you know, a nurse in a particular school is told that a student is either presumed positive or has the symptoms or is positive, the school nurses then, in conjunction certainly with the building administration, the teachers, they do the close contact tracing and determine who needs to quarantine. So again, unfortunately, as we are all aware, so we have some of our, you know, sports teams. Right now we have varsity football and we have modified volleyball who are quarantined until next week. And that was because of some positive cases. So that's really, it's handled by the school. The nurses, since this pandemic has started, the nurses, as always, but they've really stepped up and have done an amazing job. The amount of time, effort, energy, and hours it takes to do the contact tracing, it's not as simple as it sounds. It's really, they've done an incredible job and I can't applaud them enough.
Thank you.
Yes. So that leaves us really with two tasks that were at hand. And again, so again, it says, as guidelines from federal, state, and local authorities change, and they do change rapidly, and sometimes we don't know when they're going to change, we still have two tasks. The first task is to increase the in-person and/or the synchronous learning in accordance with the current physical capacity limits in each building. And then the second task is to make the necessary preparations for a relaxation of these current rules so that we can get more students in person. And again, I am told that by the end of the week, there will be a relaxation. So that might speed up the process of what we're going to be presenting tonight, which is a good thing. Okay. So right now, actions we can take under current 6-foot guidelines. Now, again, before I go into it, this is Ulster County. I know it has been, I realize I have been as frustrated as the board members and the parents and the students when you see and hear of schools in Dutchess County or Orange County or other counties, but especially our surrounding counties, where some school districts seem to be opening up faster than us. And that is because the departments of health really have the final say. The departments of health for each county can be stricter than all of the guidelines. And Ulster County has been stricter and holding tight to those rules. So that's why some schools that are very large have, you know, at least started the plans or are, you know, open or have started opening. Okay. So the things we can currently do, well, we mentioned this last week. So all current hybrid kindergarten students, we will be ready for them to begin 4 days of instruction starting March 22nd. So we still need a little time to get all that furniture in place. Okay. Sorry, my screen just. So that will take, so that again, March 22nd is not this Monday, it's the Monday before the break. All K through 12 ENL, that's English New Language Learners, okay? That's what ENL. They can begin 4 days a week beginning April 5th. That's the Monday after the break. as I said, we're continuing to investigate the capacity for 4 days of instruction for all of our IEP students, K through 12, and any at-risk students. And we can begin to bring them back April 5th. Next slide.
Okay, Tom, just before the next slide,
Sure.
can you also explain to everyone the reasoning behind these students coming back kindergarten on March 22nd and everyone else around April 5th, and not other classes?
Can you just jump in, Mrs. Dudley? I just have
Sure.
to, my, the presentation disappeared on me.
Uh-oh. Does everyone else see it? Just give me a.
Yes,
Yeah.
I see it.
So with kindergarten, one of the reasons that we're able to bring this whole group back is that we had a significantly lower registration of kindergartners this year, over 30 fewer than we normally would have, since kindergarten is not mandated by New York State. So, and then we also have a large class of remote only kindergartners. There's, at one point there was 29 students. I think there's a few fewer now. And on top of that, the kindergarten classrooms are designed as larger spaces. So those are the biggest rooms in the elementary school. So even with the 6-foot distancing and then the lower average class size, we are able to bring all of the kindergartners back and still maintain that 6-foot distancing. As far as prioritizing ENL and possibly IEP, you know, when we were looking at, well, who else, if we're trying to get as many students back in the building as we can, first of all, you know, the ENL students, if they're learning a new language, you know, prioritizing that in-person reinforcement was important. It's also a very small number of students in our district. So it was a group that we felt able to still maintain that 6-foot distancing and bring all of those students in, because it's only about 22 to 25 students K-12. So it's kind of spread out. And then, like I said, we're really looking at our IEP students. Again, these are students who, you know, have special learning plans to help them keep pace with other students. And so we wanted to prioritize, you know, as much in-person instruction with them as we can. But that's not quite as easy to make happen. So we're looking at that truly on a student by student basis to see where they will fit in and how that will work. But we are in process with that right now. You know, the special education teachers, as well as the coordinators, looking at that, they'll be reaching out to parents to explore, you know, what options might be available for students.
Thank you, Sarah.
Sarah, what is the count of the IEPs and the at-risks?
You know what, Sue, I don't know off the top of my head. The PPS office is on that a little bit more, and it really does depend on the grade level. Some grade levels have more, some grade levels have less. But across the board, it's, I don't know.
And Sarah
Mr.
and
Boyd,
Tom,
can you?
I don't mind if our directors and our
Yeah.
other administrators want to chime in. I mean,
Right,
that's
Mr.
what this discussion's all about.
So on,
Any other administrators or directors, anytime you can chime in and help move us along with this process. Thank you.
so on average, you know, we're anywhere between 15 to 20 classified students per grade level. You know, there's some grade levels that are higher, some a little lower. Currently, our students that are in 12-1-1 self-contained programs are already in 4 days a week. So we would be looking at students in our 15-1 programs and our integrated programs. Now, what we would need to be looking at, though, too, is some of our classified students who are currently remote, who would be interested in switching their mode of instruction to being in person. And as for at risk, that would go beyond students that are classified that, you know, we have some concerns about at their current status. So those numbers would be different between each building.
Okay, so we don't have a number that you can give us?
I couldn't give you an exact number at this point because we would need to be reaching out to parents to get more definitive answers on who would be even interested in returning at this point.
Okay, thank you.
And then also, Sue, part of that at-risk group may depend on the number of students who come back that are IEP or ENL. Because, you know, if we're maintaining the 6-foot distancing, we have to be very aware of the spacing of individual classrooms as well.
Sarah, just to be clear, that you're investigating both remote and hybrid students at this point. If the all remote want to come back in person. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, ultimately, yes. By the end of the week, yes, if things change, this is going to be for everyone. If all remote student wants to come back, they'll be able to. Understanding that a change like that will change the teachers, obviously, because it's a separate staff who's doing the remote.
Okay.
All right. Hey, Sarah, real quick, in the IEP classes, I know it could possibly be a privacy issue, but will we have any students that are unable to wear masks, or we know will actively refuse to, just out of, you know, who they are or what's going on?
Mr. Boyd might be able to answer that better than I have. I have not heard of any since the start of the year that has been an issue,
No.
but
No, none that I'm currently aware of.
Okay, all right, because I know at times there could be issues.
You know, that's been the one thing that's been consistent. I know, understandably, we all were thinking about every possible roadblock, but really from the beginning of the year, there has not been any issue K through 12 with a student who wouldn't wear their mask. There's never been an issue with, you know, mask breaks. Like when needed, people had mask breaks. It never became a mass problem like some people were thinking at the beginning of the school year. It's been great.
so just before we go on, I've noticed a couple of raised hands. If people could put their questions into the chat, we will look at those at the end of the whole presentation. We're only taking questions from Board of Education members while we're going through the presentation, and then we'll answer the chat questions as more of a, you know, the public comment part of the meeting.
Right, just type it right into the chat. Okay. All right, so then continuing actions we can take under the current guidelines, which may change by the end of the week. Hybrid students, grades 6 through 12, so they will start to Zoom into their class on their at-home days beginning Monday, April 5th. So for example, if a student's in-person day is on Monday, then they'll Zoom in on Tuesday to a new lesson. The remote Wednesday will stay the same. And then Thursday, they'll be in person again. Then Friday, they'll attend via Zoom. So they'll be getting 4 days of instruction, really 2 in person and the rest by Zoom. Now, because of the intricacies of, it's hard to explain, but because of the intricacies of master schedules, there is going to be some change to schedules. Now, this will create change at the middle school. It's in the special areas, and that doesn't mean it's not important. So special areas and AIS schedules. So when I say special areas, so that's like art, tech, facts. So the teachers should not change, but it would perhaps be in the special areas. It's going to be the time of the day. Perhaps it'll go from 2nd period to 5th period, or it might be, it might change the day, but the teachers in those special areas will not or should not change. And the only core subjects that won't affect any English, math, science, social studies. There are less than 10 students who might have a core change in their schedule, and those students will all be called so that they're not surprised when they get their schedules. Now, at this time, we're not recommending that elementary students Zoom in to a live class. I do know that some schools are doing that. I know some schools are not doing that. But, you know, in speaking with really the elementary experts, which are the teachers and the elementary administration, you know, we just, because of the manipulatives that have to be done, I just can't see a first grader, even up to fifth grader, being able to zoom into a class and have an effective lesson. Again, this is if we're not coming back in person 4 days a week. This is if they're just zooming in. So we wouldn't recommend elementary zooming in.
Tom, if we could just go back, quick question. If I'm a Monday and Wednesday, or a Monday and
Monday and a Thursday.
If I'm a Monday and a Thursday, I can attend via Zoom on Tuesday and Friday this is new lessons. It's not a repeat.
Correct, new lessons. So there'll be a new lesson every day of the week.
Okay, what have they been doing since then? What has it been?
Those days have been asynchronous days, so the teacher has been supplying work for students to do independently on those days.
Okay, how will you have the staffing to do this then? I guess
Because it's still the same teacher. So normally in our past model, the teacher basically taught the same lesson 2 days in a row to their in-person students, and the students at home did other work on their own without a teacher. So now the students who are in person, will be in the classroom, and then the students who normally would have been doing asynchronous work, they're going to be zooming into that same class that's happening in person.
okay.
You still look confused, Sue.
It's just my face. Okay. Yeah, right.
Okay.
Just one quick question. So that is for middle school that we would expect to see changes. This is being proposed for the middle school and high school. So just confirming high school would not have changes in core classes or special areas?
That is correct from what Mr. Zimmer has told us in the past. Yes, that should be true for the high school. The biggest issue with the middle school schedule and why there would be this change is that because of the capacity of classrooms at the middle school and the 12-foot distancing that needed to happen for band, chorus, and PE, those classes are only being offered currently remotely. There's no in-person PE, band, or chorus occurring. So we were doing those on that at-home asynchronous day. Well, so now if students are going to be following the same schedule, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, there's no slot for that PE or band or chorus section. So we need to shift some of that around, and it could be that, like I said, it could be that some of that will change. It could be that some students may not have a special area course for the fourth quarter. There could be just some changes like that. We're trying very hard to minimize that the best of our ability, but I think I would say that most middle schoolers will see at least one change and all of that. If nothing else, PE will look differently. Probably that will be happening on Wednesdays. Remote.
Okay. And for middle school, I know we have had a tremendous amount of changes in scheduling, especially at the beginning of the year, kind of have leveled out on that, and people are feeling pretty comfortable. Just want to confirm that we have really done kind of, I know the master schedule, I'm sure, is not done if we make this change, but we have done enough background homework to ensure that we are confident that that change can be made with minimal impact. I know, Tom, you had said maybe around 10 or so students to core areas, but mostly just to the special areas.
Yes, we are confident.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Camille. My question's along that same line, to just wondering at what point will that schedule be finalized? And when that does happen, just get an idea of what the impact will be on schedules. Middle school, it's a tough time for transition, so just concerned about the transition that would happen, how many kids' schedules are going to be impacted. So just hoping that we can have the information as to, will this be ready before April 5th? So we don't have much time, 2 weeks and then spring break. So just, that's a lot of changes over a short period of time.
It is. So if everyone understands, we have 3 weeks, really. There's 2 weeks after this week, there's 2 full weeks of school. Then we have the 1 week off for spring break, and then we are back the day after Easter. So Easter Monday, April 5th. So we, at this time, you know, if that has to get pushed back, we would let you know, but we'll be ready to have these changes done for April 5th.
Mike Bacazzi is here. I will tell you that I do have some concerns about this, not just the timing as mentioned by Camille, but in the beginning of the year, and we were planning for the year, tech fatigue was something that we were talking about. So right now, we're going to require these students who weren't required to Zoom in on their asynchronous day to Zoom in, and the expectation is they're on from 7:30 to 2:30, barring some breaks for lunch. I have concerns about that.
Right, as do we, but I think that in the next 2 days, Mr. Bakatsias, what we presented so far might all be moot, and the rules may lessen so that we can bring students back 4 days a week. So I can't confirm that, but we are presenting, you know, what is true today.
Right. And I also know that that might bring other challenges
Absolutely.
for planning and management.
Yes.
Thank you.
This is Camille again. Just I want to with elementary school. I mean, I'm concerned that I get the screen time, but just concerned that group needs the most support. They can't sit at home and log in. It's asynchronous days, so just thinking that maybe there's some way to think creatively about how to get them some more time. So we're going to bring it in for the older kids, but just to see that group getting less amount of instruction, and, you know, synchronous instruction or in-person instruction, I just think we're missing the mark on that one. So that I'm hoping that we can just, like I said, find some other solutions, look at what other districts are doing with that group, where it's still keeping in mind their developmental needs, or making it developmentally appropriate. So I just, you know, I'm surprised to see that that group is not getting that same level as everybody else.
We will make sure we work on that, Mrs. Adoma. Again, I'm hopeful that it's not going to be that they're zooming in after the spring break, but that they're coming in. But we'll know more in the next 2 days. So again, remote students, so that certainly there's still students who are all remote, and no matter what happens, people will have the choice to remain all remote if that's what they choose. So the impact on remote students, so in K through 5, nothing will change. Everything will be the same. The only way it would change for remote students is if they choose to go hybrid. For 6 through 12, the remote students will follow their same remote schedule. So nothing will change. Now at the middle school, this is for remote students. They might see some changes, a few changes in their teacher or schedule. Foreign language would, obviously, their foreign language isn't going to change. They're not going to go through 3/4 of the year taking Spanish and then suddenly be switched to French. So they'll stay in the same language with the same teacher, but the frequency or the days they take it might change, or the period they take it might change. And then at the middle school, band, chorus, AIS, phys ed may see a change in their schedule. And again, for the band and chorus, there is only one teacher. For PE, it's just one or the other teacher. There's only 2 teachers, and some students might see a change in their AIS teacher, but it'll be a very limited number of students. We'll also be instituting the bridge program. So that's that after school kind of enrichment or extra help program, or the Regents review program, however we want to call it, depending on the level, now begin in the 4th quarter. So we wanted to go over quickly, Mrs. Dudley-Lemick will review the survey results, what we had from the survey.
So thank you to all the parents who responded to our survey about returning more students to school. We had 924 total responses. That represents 924 individual students because we asked parents to fill out a survey for each of their children. So, we have about 1,500 students. We had well over half of our students represented in this survey, which is as you can see, the responses were proportionate from the buildings, were proportionate to the size of the building. About 46% of our responses were from the elementary school, which makes sense since most of our students in the district are in the elementary school. And then, middle school, high school, 75% of our responses were students who were hybrid currently.
Yeah, you can go ahead and take it.
24% of them
form or
were
you can fill it in online.
remote
I can give you
only
a form if you want.
Yeah.
Just a reminder, if people could mute themselves, please.
Thank you, Sarah.
So, and again, that's fairly representative of the number of students, district-wide that we have doing the hybrid program and the remote only program. So it was very representative. When we look at grade levels, pretty much an equal number of students from each grade level were represented in this too. And there wasn't a lot of surprise in the survey results. If you look up to the top left part of the screen, this is people who are currently remote students. We see that 87% of them would like to remain remote through the end of the school year. That's about 198 responses. But there was a significant piece of that group that is interested in their child returning to school if there are 4 days of instruction offered. And that's about 29 students, from this survey.
Sarah, of those 227 responses, what are we total as far as a remote-only instruction right now? Do we have a number? Is it 300, 400? Probably
It's about
close to that.
It's about 30% of our total population.
So we got about 1,700. So we're looking at 340, about 400 and something. So we have about half of those have responded. Okay.
Yeah. And then on the right-hand side there, these are our current hybrid students. And again, not too surprising, 77% of the respondents, or 537 students from this survey, would like to increase to 4 days of in-person instruction. But there, again, was a chunk of people that said they liked the current hybrid schedule. Anecdotally, from some of the parent conversations I've had, many of them wanted to stay the same because they were concerned about schedule changes. That was their biggest reason for picking hybrid. Although, if you then look at the bottom right-hand side chart there on the screen, we did say, if we went to 4 days of instruction, would you prefer that your child go fully remote? And most respondents said no, but there were about 31 students who prefer, rather than being in school more days with more people, would rather go all remote. So, that's interesting. It's actually just going from the numbers on the survey, there were 31 hybrid students who maybe would go remote and 29 remote students who may go to 4 days of instruction, which is kind of almost an even swap in a way. So, again, I don't think there were big surprises in the results. I think most of us knew that, best case scenario would be to get more kids in school more days of the week. But we really appreciate families that took the time to fill this out. We did have questions about whether this would be binding. Depending on the decisions that are made here tonight, we're going to need to hear from more parents anyway. So there probably will be either another survey or some other way that you can convey your choice to the building administration. But any questions on these results?
No, I just got a couple of quick comment.
Sure.
I kind of reached out to a couple of administrators, both on the other side of the river and on this side of the river. And a lot of their, especially on the Dutchess County side, I know their move to reopen to 4 days a week was based a lot on the surveys that they sent out to their parents. That kind of drove their decision in that direction. So not saying that we're moving in that direction, but that's just what I'm hearing on that side of the river. And similar on this side of the river with those surveys. They're based a lot of their decisions on the surveys.
Sarah and Tom, if we do, let's say that the Department of Health doesn't change anything, and so we still are faced with these limits. If we have these 537 children who would like to go for my child to attend 4 days a week, what are the logistics in what would we have to do building wise?
Well, if the 6-foot distancing doesn't change, we don't really have an option. There's not a way to fit 537 students in the buildings and keep 6-foot distancing.
Oh, okay.
Situation we're in right now.
Oh, okay. All right.
The rest of the presentation, we'll talk a little bit about if that changes, what kinds of things we'll have to put in place.
Okay.
That's why we ended up where we are right now, because 6 is pretty wide and it's hard to
Right.
to fit very many students into the classroom.
Right. So at this point, we're not thinking about the plastic partitions on the desks.
Well, that's
Well, we are. That'll be in the next 2 pages. Yeah. From
Yeah.
now.
Oh, all right.
2 more
But you can-
slides.
Yeah, you can only do that if they relax the 6 feet.
Right.
So,
Sarah, even without the relaxation of the 6-foot rule, would we, with bringing the students back in that we had presented earlier, the kindergartners and the other special groups, would we also do the partitions for those as well?
we're not planning on doing that. I mean, maybe eventually. We don't have the partitions in district right this minute, so we probably wouldn't have them in time to do the kindergarten. And again, you know, if you have 6 feet distancing, there's not as much of a need for it. So no, we probably wouldn't, but I think, you know,
Right.
I don't want to get too much ahead of this presentation. We'll definitely be
Okay,
talking
I'll
about
let you
that.
go and then I'll ask more
We'll talk
questions.
about barriers a little bit more soon.
Sure, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Okay. Any other questions at this point? Fun.
All right, so I know that says this in the coming weeks, we may receive guidance from New York State Ed, New Department of Health, or Ulster County Department of Health that allows for social distancing of less than 6 feet. And in preparation for that, we continue to plan to bring students back. Again, I would say it's very safe bet that in the next 2 days, we are going to hear from the Ulster County and that it very likely will reduce the 6 feet. So we can kind of, from this point on in the presentation, this might be pointing a little bit more towards the reality of where we're going and where we're heading or where we will be when we get back from spring break. And if it takes a little longer than that, we would let you know, but that is our goal, which is April 5th. So again, 4 days of in-person. So if it's less than 6 feet, it is our goal to bring all students, K through 12, who want to come back, whether you are hybrid or remote. You can switch from remote to hybrid and come in 4 days a week. That would change your teacher, but the hybrid students will come in 4 days a week. So keep in mind though, again, it says in bold that anyone who changes from one mode to another. So if you decide that I don't want to be around that many people, I'm hybrid, but I don't want to be around, you can't just stay home and Zoom in. You're either going to come in 4 days a week or you'd have to go remote. So we can't have 3 different schedules going at the same time. But a remote person, certainly, if you want to come in, you can come in. It will change your teacher though. Now, again, if we're bringing students back 4 days a week, either April 5th or on or about April 5th, kindergarten through 5th grade, there'll be no change in your classroom teacher. Again, that is as long as you remain in the mode of instruction that you've been in. Now, some supports at home. So there are things like AIS, OT, PT, those schedules will likely change. And again, it just means, maybe the day, the time will change. There might be a teacher change even, but they will be minimal. In grades 6 through 8, so at the middle school, again, you wouldn't see a schedule change or teacher change beyond what we've already talked about to accommodate the hybrid Zoom model. So again, we've already talked about that. If students in middle school start coming 4 days a week with for everyone, Wednesday staying an all remote day, that in the special areas, they will see a change in the time or the day they have their special area. They might see a handful of special area teacher changes. And for 10 or less students, there might be some core subject teacher changes. And in grades 9 through 12, if the students after spring break start coming back 4 days a week, there'll be only changes in PE and science labs. So the teachers would stay the same. It would just be the time or the day that you have PE or your lab. And does everyone understand that? So I'll go through that again. K through 5, if we start coming back on or around April 5th, 4 days a week, because the guidance has allowed us to, in K through 5, there'll be no change in your teacher. The only way there'll be a change in the teacher is if a parent decides to change from hybrid to remote or from remote to hybrid. There will be some of those at-home services, they might change. Your AIS, OT, PT, speech. The day or the time might change for some students. In the middle school, if students start coming back 4 days a week on or about April 5th, which is the Monday after Easter, students will likely see a change in the time and even possibly the teacher in the special areas. So facts, art, tech. And there'll be a small number of students who would see a change in the major subjects. And in high school, students coming in 4 days a week in person, Wednesday being all remote. PE and science lab, the day or the time will change, possibly not the teacher.
Can I just ask one question? When we talk about the Wednesday being all remote, is that still a synchronous day or does that become an asynchronous day?
So that will be synchronous for most students. Now in the secondary, there's some courses that are going to be given on that day, correct, Mrs. Dudley-Lemick? And
Yeah.
at the elementary, it's synchronous.
It would follow kind of what they're doing right now. Yeah, that
Okay, I just want to
Wednesday
make sure.
shouldn't change much for most students. Just some of those scheduling changes that we've talked about at the middle school, or I don't think the high school, but that might shift things around a little bit on those days. But
Okay, but for the most part, the Wednesday stays.
The Wednesday
consistent with the
should look
Wednesday it
pretty
is.
much the same as
Okay.
it does now. Yes.
Thank you.
I also just want to, Mrs. Cerniglia indicated that our student, one of our student reps had a question. I don't know if the board wants to hear from Jake right now or wait till a little bit later.
You should hear right now.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Okay, Jake, you're up. Are you there?
Is that one of the questions you put into chat?
I don't know.
I did see a question that I think it was Jake put in, and it was
Yeah.
about the barriers.
Barriers.
And we're going to answer that question in about 2 slides.
Right.
So if we can kind of hold that question, I'm going to answer it shortly.
So if the child is happy with remote and if the child is happy with current hybrid, they won't see any change. Correct?
A remote won't see change. There might be, let me just go back a slide. So a remote student, remember in K through 5, no change. 6 through 12, remote students will follow, there'll be no change. At the middle school, foreign language will move to 4 days of instruction, and band, chorus, AIS, PE may see a change, and what day or time, or possibly the teacher. But again, that wouldn't be the case for band or for chorus. It would be maybe your AIS or your PE teacher could change. That's-
Right.
Mr. Bon Jovi, can I jump in for a second?
Yes, Jake,
That was Joel.
Joel, oh, Joel.
But with Sue's question, the only concern that I would have is if we had a very large number of remote students change back to the hybrid model. And one of those, if I have two sections of remote and that one of those remote sections gets very small, that may have to be consumed into the other class because I may need an additional teacher to teach hybrid at a particular grade level. So yes, for the most part, there would be no changes, but if we have an inordinate number of people switching, we will have to accommodate that.
Right, and currently, Sue, looking at the survey, those current remote-only students, their parents, only 12% out of the 227 that responded kind of chose that they would come back to hybrid.
Right, that's why I asked the question. Yeah.
Joel, I think,
Does-
If it remains around 12, 14, 15%, even of the 510 that are currently what we think 30% of our total enrollment, it's not a large number of students that would be changing from all remote to back to hybrid,
Right,
from what I see on the survey, based on those
Yeah.
percentages.
Right, if we, if that stays accurate, given this presentation today. I did see Jake look like he was ready to go.
Yes.
You wanna,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi. Yeah, I just had a question. Well, two questions. First was about the shields, but you said that you were going to answer that. and
Yep,
then
give me two more slides, Jake.
Okay. No problem. And the other was, so only certain students would come back the 5th for the 4 days a week?
if the county does not change that 6-foot rule, then yes, only certain students would be coming back. If
Okay.
6-foot rule changes, then all hybrid students would be coming back to 4 days a week.
Okay. So we would have to wait until the rule 60 to change for all regular students to come back. Okay.
Yes, but
Yes. But we'll have an answer to that by Friday.
Okay.
yes, we're thinking it's coming soon.
Yes.
And just to clarify, any student who is hybrid, if we go to 4 days of instruction, that student will need to go to 4 days of in-person instruction. There will not be a choice that a hybrid student would continue to do 2 days in school and 2 days Zooming in. We'll kind of eliminate that option because that's just too many different ways to try to keep attendance and know where kids are. So once we make that change, it'll be all remote or 4 days in person.
yeah, and Sarah, just to that point, I've talked to administrators in a few other districts, and I know, just something for us to consider. Obviously, no decisions, anytime tonight, but one thing that other districts have talked about putting into place, and some have actually put into place, is to say if you have, 4 unexcused absences from in person and you do remote instead, you have that conversation and they move that kid to remote instruction so that you're not essentially taking up a seat or a space in the classroom if they're choosing to really go that remote method more than they are the hybrid.
That's a very good, yeah, I think we could definitely take that into consideration.
Yes.
Sarah and Tom, this is Camille. Just to go back for the synchronous day on Wednesday, what classes would be offered on that synchronous day? So we talked about in the previous slides going and adding the special areas back into the schedule. So what would happen on that Wednesday that wouldn't happen the other days?
So definitely PE at the middle school for in-person students will be happening on that Wednesday remotely. The remote students would still have their PE remote throughout the week, but the in-person students would have it that Wednesday. So that's one big change. We're still looking at the band and chorus. Some students would probably have it on that might be the one time that we can get everybody together in one spot for band and chorus would be on that Wednesday. But we're also looking at, doing some smaller lesson groups like you normally would do band or chorus lessons during the school day in person. But like I said, that distancing hasn't changed at all. That's still 12 feet. So there's no way to do in-person chorus in the space that we have and maintain 12 feet distancing, and the same with band. So that still would need to be all virtual. Does that answer your question, Camille?
Yeah, so the only reason why we have to have that synchronous day on Wednesday would be for the chorus, PE, and band, is what you're saying.
No, at the high school, there's, you have a couple college courses. There's some remote only courses at the high school that are given on Wednesday also.
If they're remote, why can't they be given the other days of the week?
The kids, Mr. Zimmer, feel free to jump in, but I believe because the students really have a full schedule on all the other days.
That's correct, Mr. Bon Jovi. The classes are offered during the activity periods. There are psychology classes, our high school psychology class and the college level psychology class, because the teacher is teaching it isn't physically at school and it's a remote class, and we couldn't put it in as a class period. So they meet in the middle of the day when our activity periods are on Wednesdays. That was the only place that would fit in the schedule.
And then on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Zimmerman, they have a full schedule of other courses.
Absolutely. They still do their psychology work on the other 4 days. They're just asynchronous work on those 4 days. So Wednesday is the only day they meet as a group with the teacher.
Right. And I think as we get to talking about purchasing the plexiglass barriers, I think it's going to be, and I believe every school I know, they're keeping the Wednesday, because you will have to, I know we are doing cleaning every day and deep cleaning, but there's going to have to be some extra cleaning with all these barriers that we're going to need even that day just to make sure we get barriers cleaned, which we'll be talking about momentarily.
Sarah, could you just go over, you were cutting out before, if on this slide, if we do this 4 days in person, now if my child is happy with the current hybrid schedule that they have, did you say before that they would not have the option to Zoom in on the other days?
Correct.
Okay. All
They
right.
would be, it needs to be either in person or remote.
Okay.
Because it's just too many different schedules and keeping track of attendance.
Right.
all of that
Understand.
becomes difficult.
Understand. Yep.
And just with this model, just going back to the remote learners, they'll have kind of everyone will have 5 days, whether it's so 4 in person, 1 synchronous for the hybrid group or the in-person group at that point, and then remote will have just 5 days of synchronous. Is that correct?
The remote students, and again, they're going to have to maybe jump in here. For the high school and the middle school, some of our remote only sections are very large. For instance, it could be Global 9. There could be a section of 40 students in the remote section. So those have been happening on essentially like an A-B kind of schedule. So to go to 4 days of instruction with a class of 4 students, that is not very manageable. So I do not believe that all courses would be able to go to 4 days synchronous instruction. So Bill or Ryan.
At the high school, most can go to synchronous 4-day instruction. There are a very small number of classes that are so large that it might be unmanageable, but it is possible. Many of our college classes are remote students that are in our college or AP level classes are already meeting 5 days a week. So it's not a huge change for many of the classes that we offer, But there are a few that might remain as in the AB or the hybrid schedule.
What's being proposed in the presentation this evening states that the middle school would stay with what is currently happening. They would not move to increased synchronous days for the exception of in foreign language for that same reason, because if you combine the 2 days, the numbers are incredibly large and would be unmanageable for those teachers.
You'd have about, in some classes, the middle school, there'd be like 80 kids. You might correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Judge, on the same day at the same time.
There could be between 40 and 70 kids in one class period if we smush them together, which is not feasible.
Sarah and Tom, did I hear that if there is a relaxing of the 6-foot rule, you're prepared to increase density in our schools, or that's still a conversation?
Yes, we are prepared to increase density, and we'll have to purchase those barriers, and we're going to talk about that. But yes, we are
That's the next
prepared
slide.
on or around April 5th. Again, it depends on, getting those barriers in, but we've been assured that we should be able to get those in plenty of time, even though it's only 3 weeks. Mr. Miller, Pete Miller, our director of our O&M, he needs about 2 weeks, and he would start tomorrow or the next, as soon as we know when we can do this. He needs about 2 weeks just of legwork to get things out of storage, put them back together, get them into the rooms. So he would need, the next 2 weeks plus the spring break, plus the weekends. And he would be ready. He assured us he could be ready for April 5th. And I'm saying, that is our goal, that we are ready to go April 5th. If that changed, if that had to be pushed a few days out, we would let everyone know. But at this time, we are pretty confident that April 5th, we would be ready for 4 days a week of in-person learning, presuming the guidelines change from 6 feet to something less than 6 feet in the next 2 days.
Can we talk about that April 5th date real quickly, since it's come up a couple of times? I'm a little confused as to date. After an extended break, we've erred on the side of caution, knowing that families are mixing communities. There's a greater risk of exposure. Right now, the numbers in Ulster County are 50% higher than they were when we first did this last year during spring break. So I know we haven't had this discussion yet, but are we planning on keeping after the break, looking for residual fallout from extra contact?
Well, that's a conversation that we'll have to have, certainly. We can have it tonight. We can, have it on, we have another board meeting on Tuesday. I don't know if we have to make that decision tonight. That won't change. That will still, if the guidelines change, we'll still go full force forward to be ready. And then it's really up to the board if they wanted to take go all remote for the week after spring break.
I just don't want to see a perfect storm occur where we
no one does.
An increased density, we're shortening the distance for protection, and then putting in populations that have had significant, some of these airline rates to Florida, I'm sure they're a temptation. So I just want to make sure that we still keep the safety. I know everyone is, but I also know everybody's chomping at the bit to be free again. And I just want to make sure we continue with the safety we've had.
That's a good point, Ed. What you mentioned, that the positivity rate in Ulster County is increasing. I would be somewhat shocked to hear then that our county director of health would relax those barrier restrictions of the 6 foot to even lessen it. So kind of, we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place here, making that decision with that being said, and if that is in fact true, which I'm sure it is, that the positivity rate could somewhat be increasing. And yes, will it increase even more after the spring break? We don't know that at this point, but I'm curious on that and what the county is going to do in the next several days.
The numbers are very deceiving because we're hearing that everything's been dropping, which it has. But the problem is it's dropping from its apex. You know, when we came off of Christmas and New Year's, we had reached an all-time high. But if you look back to the cases and exposure from March and April of last year, and then as we progressed through the summer, then it came up through Thanksgiving with the exposures, and then even higher after Christmas and New Year's. I'm just concerned that we're going to see that we're higher than we were last year, but we're lower than our apex, which is, and hopefully it'll keep dropping. But I just want to make sure we don't hit that hiccup and hurt people.
I have concerns too, Ed.
So I certainly would support, if it's the board's pleasure, to take a all remote break for that first week. That would also, again, presuming if the guidelines change, that gives us this one more week to get everything ready for. So it would be similar to what we did in January, that we took a week break. So I have no issue with that. It would just push this start time to the 12th, Monday, the 12th.
I support that.
I think we haven't gotten to the barrier part yet, but if we have
Correct.
to order additional items, April 5th is just not realistic, logistically. It doesn't seem like every district is ordering barriers. In New York State, in the US, so trying to get, we haven't, orders haven't been placed, but to get those in place by April 5th, I just don't think is doable unless we have some type of special connection someplace. So I think with what Ed said, the safety and, why not wait for that?
I agree. All right, so why don't we move on to, where are we? Yes, okay. We are on the next slide. So things just to keep in mind. So again, presuming we saw it coming back 4 days a week, on or about April 12th. So and we'll get through it. This first one is not I don't see this as a major blockade. We worried about a lot of things when we started this, and really it wasn't that big a deal. But the arrival and dismissal, each school was going to have to slightly alter their protocols, just because now you're going to be taking temperatures of twice as many people. We don't have the scanners. They were, those were quite expensive that you just walk through. So it's going to be, this is something we'll talk through about, whether the parents are going to be doing the filling out the forms either electronically before the students come to school. But this is nothing that is a deal breaker. But just parents and the public have to understand that the arrival and dismissal protocols will change, and we will make them known to you. Understand that the lunch periods obviously will have a large number of students who are unmasked in the same space. So high school, middle school, they're gonna spread out as much as they possibly can. The weather's turning nice. We're gonna try to have kids outside, but we are going to spread out as much as possible. But there might be as many as 100 students, so we do plan on having some barriers to try to have some separation in the cafeterias with barriers, but just understand there will be a lot of students. At the elementary, they would likely stay in the classrooms, but it'll be double the number of students who are unmasked. Again, the reason not to move into the cafeteria, you still have the issue of the close contact. So you're going to get the large numbers possibly of close contact quarantining is in the lunch periods, which is what the guidance says. So we're saying it could lead to large number of students needing to quarantine if there's some exposure. So the plastic barriers, so whatever we want to call them, plexiglass barriers, plastic barriers, so they're going to be necessary. So every single desk and every table in every classroom will need barriers. We'll need barriers for the cafeteria spaces and for other learning spaces. So we reviewed this with Mr. Miller, and I know I kind of gave an estimate last week. It is about, again, these are on the barriers, presuming these are available. There was about $15,000 for the barriers for the desks, and then another 15, but it's more than that. But we'd be looking closer to, just being realistic, this would be about a $50,000 expense. And that is high. I do know that there are other districts that are spending 2 and 3 times that amount on the barriers. So the monies are available. I would think it's not going to be a one-time purchase, folks. I mean, I don't see the plastic barriers out in public going away in some areas, maybe ever. So in your supermarkets, your banks, in stores, I don't see people taking those barriers down. So I don't see this as we're only going to use them for 3 months and then next year we won't have barriers. I see very possibly having barriers in certain places next year. I see the possibility of, at times during flu season, the Department of Health might say, hey, if you have barriers, put them up to prevent just regular flu. So I know it is a large expense. The monies are available, and we need to make a decision. This is the decision that needs to be made tonight, that we can't wait to order these. So if we're saying we're going to do this, we're going to have to order tomorrow, because as soon as an announcement comes out, everyone else, as Mrs. Adoma said, is going to be ordering some barriers. And we do have some connections possibly. So I gotta work my connections. So we have to act fast on ordering barriers. And then, obviously the bus routes, we have to look at the bus routes, but they're really changed, but they're really just going to go back to what they were. So there will be some changes in bus times. Obviously, everyone would be, our transportation department's been fantastic. Everyone would be aware of any bus changes of times. Now, when we say we need to hire more people, we don't need to hire more people. There are positions where people who left because of health issues. So certain monitors in the cafeterias, obviously at the elementary school. So there's people who left because of health concerns, so we didn't need to replace because the students were eating in the classroom. So when we say we may need to hire increased supervision, it's not anything that's not in the budget. These are positions that we did not fill yet because we didn't need them. So we would just need to rehire some positions for those areas.
Tom, I do agree with you. I think these plastic barriers are going to be around for a real long time. But what I am concerned about is making these many moving part changes so late in the year. I'm concerned about the potential disruption, but I'm only one person.
Swinging back to Jake's question earlier, the barriers in the high school, are the students, do they transport their own barriers?
No, so the barriers will stay on the desks. The barriers stay on the desks in all the rooms. They don't carry them from room to room. So they are on the desks, and then they'll be cleaned by the staff.
But between classes, in the high school, aren't they moving from?
The reality between classes would not be possible.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. But other different students sit in different.
They do.
In desks, yeah.
All right, excuse me. I know the student rep had a question about the shield. You might have already answered that question, but you want to go ahead, Jake?
It was more of a comment than a question. I totally agree that I feel that these shields will be around after I'm gone, but the possibility is always going to be there. But more of my worry was, why not wait until the following year to do so? Like, I understand we want to push this, like us, the students, to come back into school to be more partaking in the classes, but I feel that I don't know, the funding is there, like you said, but why take the chance?
Okay, I appreciate that, Jake. I think, certainly, yes, bringing anyone, increasing people coming back in, there is going to be a risk of people getting, spreading COVID. Really we're responding to, the majority of the people though from the survey who want to come back to 4 days a week. And if we have the permission from the county to do that, I mean, that will be, I'm presuming if the board supports that, that would be the actions that we would take.
Mr. Bon Jovi, regarding the plastic barriers, we know that plexiglass really is not rated for schools. There was a waiver to allow schools to use them. And you expect that waiver to stay in place for the duration you mentioned?
I don't have a crystal ball, but everyone's buying the same barriers. So I think yes.
Mike, are you referring to like the polycarbonate versus plexiglass?
That is
I know
correct.
Maybe Mr. Miller, is Pete Miller on the call, just so I don't say anything that's incorrect regarding the barriers.
There are a number of comments out there about them being non-compliant or compliant. As was in a conversation today, they're on the desk, they're not part of the building. So the question is how do they comply or have to comply with building code when they are contents, not necessarily part of the building? So that's another question that has to be answered. And a lot of the information that's out there goes back to August of 2020. There's not a lot of current information on where they're going with this as of now.
I think part of me really sides with Sue Gilmore as to say we're 3/4 of the way through the year. Are all these changes, what's the gain with many of these changes? I understand we would be bringing students in. We have a model right now where we've allowed high-risk sports to continue. And I must say that has proven mixed results. Because teams are out on quarantine right now. So increasing the density of students in school at this time, while there's plastic barriers in the classrooms, and I know the students have masks, but you're just increasing the density, and that's a number of transitions in the school day that they're all in hallways and this type of thing. I just have concerns on what really is the gain for the 2021 school year.
I think what we've heard from some, and it's odd for me to be on the other side of this, but what we've heard from the parents who do want to push it back, they're upset at the way their students are learning now, that how the stress is put on families, the stress is put on students.
Yes, and I am reading those comments too.
No, I would say what's obvious is that the stress is there because of COVID. It's not, there's no magic solution that we're going to be able to come up with that's going to alleviate all of that stress. It's just it's a difficult time. I agree with you, Mike. It's safe. I think what we've tried to do all along is maintain safety for as many and as both psychologically, educationally, physically, to create the best path. It would be a shame to have come this far and, like you say, push the density just to. We're eager. We want life to become normal again. I think we have to be patient.
And we knew that when some activities started and it started to feel normal, that we would have that inclination. Everybody wants to get back to normal. I think when we were planning this school year out, we knew that this was not a thriving model. This is not what anyone prefers. But as far as there's still a public safety aspect to this, and I'm just wondering for this particular year, what that gain would be. Thank you.
Hey, guys, I think we have a good plan. I think we can put a pretty good, safe product out there and ensure a safe, distanced atmosphere in the school with these different protocols we're going to put in place. The unknown factor in all of this, and I think what could easily sink it, is what happens outside of school. We have no control over that. And I'm hearing people tell stories and some of the little things that came over the chat screen about, what about these people that, go out and party all weekend, or the kids get together. It's human nature. They're going on vacation, they're doing this, they're bringing stuff back to the school district. We can very consciously put together a good, safe atmosphere, but we have no control over what happens at home and what is brought into the school from the outside. That's the X factor.
Well,
I think I'm just.
I hear you, Tom. We had a plan for sports as well, and 50% of those teams are quarantined as we speak.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna play devil's advocate here if I could for a minute. I mean, I think there's a lot to gain for our students. I mean, we talked last week that we wanted to hear the community, and I think from looking at the survey results, the community has spoken. There is a high percentage of people who want their kids back. Yes, it's up to us in the district to make sure that we can do so as safely as absolutely possible, and that's our responsibility. But looking back at it, we have 8-10 weeks of school left, right? In any past year, if you were to say for the next 8 or 10 weeks, this student's only going to attend school and have synchronous learning 2 or 3 days a week, we would have an issue with that and have a concern over their education. And I think that's what we need to reflect back on as well. There's children out there that are thriving in the current model, but there's also children that are not at all. And we need to try to do what's best for everybody. Obviously, there's not one good answer. But I do go back to kind of those surveys that we said we were going to rely heavily on.
I have a few.
Yeah.
You're right, Heather.
Yeah, and Heather, I agree with some of your points. I'm kind of mixed right now from what I'm hearing. I know the board seems to be a little bit moving in two directions at this point. My concern initially was that coming back on April 5th, moving to June 25th is actually 12 weeks of school. If you take away the 2 test weeks, you got 10 weeks of instruction. And normally, especially at the high school level, they start reviewing sometime at the beginning of June. Maybe some of them start beginning at end of May. Tom, do we know what's happening with June tests at this point, both school exams and regents?
Oh,
I can.
Sarah, sure.
Go ahead, Tom, if you want
No,
to.
you can go, Sarah.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I think this is an update even just again since last Tuesday night when I spoke about this. We still, no, maybe I said this, things have been changing so quickly. So we still don't know what's happening with 3 through 8 ELA math and science exams. For regents exams, as long as Regents approves it at their March 15th and 16th meetings, the only Regents exams that will be offered will be 11th grade ELA exam, the biology Regents exam, the earth science Regents exam, and algebra 1 Regents exam. So there's only 4 Regents exams that will even be offered. The rest of them will not be administered at all this year. So, so we don't, and it could be if the federal government granted New York State's waiver, it could be that we would have no Regents exams again, like we had last year, potentially. So that would leave us to doing all local exams, final exams, like we would do in a non-Regents level course. And and that, in past years, we usually do those exams during or before Regents Weeks even happens, so that we don't have to, the kids aren't studying for all of that. But we would move those into what traditionally would have been called Regents Week this year, so that you can get another, week at least of instruction happening there. The schedule at the middle school and elementary school wouldn't really change that much at all as far as the end of the year goes. They would still, like they've done in the past, have normal days of school up until the end.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. So right now, there's another area that's up in the air, let's say. We're not sure what the county is going to do with the 6-foot rule. We're not sure what the state's going to do with regions at this point in time. I look at this survey, and I know I've seen some chat come up that it missed a few points, but I think as far as me being objective and looking at this, and some of the key questions were those in regards to students being remote and wanting to stay remote, and students that are hybrid and want to increase to the 4 days. I think it speaks a lot to what the parents want. Me personally, if my children were still in school, I can't say at this point what I would say back then. But I think right now, for me, I have to kind of weigh on the side of the survey, because it did reach and quite a few, and I want to thank the parents for responding, quite a few, and you have over 900 respond to a survey. That's a large percentage of our overall student population. I know other districts are doing the 4-day. I look at comments from some of the other board members about pausing after the spring break. That takes away another week of in-person instruction. So it's going to be a decision that it's going to be hard to make for all of us. I know Tom Bon Jovi just earlier said that we need to make a decision real soon, like today, in order to have our barriers in place. Our next meeting is 5 days away, on March 16th. Is March 16th the day that we make our final determination, knowing what the county's going to release in the next couple of days? I saw someone on a chat just say that the Board of Regents is going to make a decision on March 16th, same day that we're meeting for our board. So I don't know how true all this is, but that might be where we should lean towards to make a final decision. Give ourselves that opportunity to see what the county's going to do, and see what the Board of Regents is going to do, because I fear for those students in the high school that the ELA, the biology, the earth science, and algebra 1, are we going to be able to provide them enough additional instruction to be able to pass those regions if they still have them? Is that something? I know we have the bridge program, but I think we're going to need more than the bridge program at some point in time to get these kids through, especially the high school students and or some of the middle school, to pass those regions and not have to take them again in August or next January. So that's another concern.
Alan, just to clarify on that, I'm sorry. One of the things they're voting on at the Board of Regents as well would be decoupling the Regents exams from graduation requirements. So
Okay.
students would not need to pass those exams in order to graduate. That would simply be fulfilling a federal regulation that you have at least one math, ELA, and science exam in the 4 years of.
Right.
So.
The one thing, just thinking about the survey that was brought up, is that tonight we got an option of more instruction, right? So there's the idea of having more instruction. So with the model that was presented earlier, where there's you zoom in or, log in remotely to classes to go from 4 days versus, or to give you 5 days versus the 3 days of synchronous or live instruction that we're having. So for me, just hearing from families, if they want more instruction or they want more instruction plus in person, because that means two very different things. And one has less risk than the other as far as safety. So that's something that I could not discern from the survey, just the way that it was presented to families. So I'm not sure it's something that, we should consider. We're talking about doing what our community wants, but just we didn't get that opportunity from the way the survey was structured to hear that.
If we were going to, if we were going to wait till Tuesday just to confirm any changes happening with the county, we could probably get a survey out tomorrow by the end of the day, but it would have to close pretty quickly because we would need it for Tuesday night. So we could, would I be correct, Mrs. Udlin? We could probably get a survey out asking those things out tomorrow before the end of the school day, have it open till midnight on Monday, and then have the results for Tuesday night. We can certainly do that, I believe. Yes?
That would be the middle school and high school level, right? Though, because elementary school, we're not recommending doing additional screen time at the elementary school level.
Well, this is, I think the
Correct.
survey would talk about, it would have a few things, but it would talk about the idea that very possibly coming back in person 4 days a week.
Well,
That's not the issue. That's what we'd be asking, correct?
No, because we did that on the survey that we already did. The difference in this survey would be asking parents if they had a preference for coming back 4 days in person or doing the remote or the hybrid, so 2 days in person and 2 days zooming in.
Right.
We didn't give them that option on the survey that we just did because we hadn't really been talking about that at that point.
That would be the
Right.
current situation.
Regardless, though, not to change topics, but regardless of if we decide to do another survey, and I think that's a good idea, because at the middle school, high school level, we didn't give the option of would we prefer more instruction virtually or more instruction in person. So I think that's an important distinction. My concern, and just talking about the waiting until Tuesday to really make a decision, I would still recommend, want the district to still look into placing that order for the plexiglass barriers, because, as we had mentioned earlier, and I felt the same way since we've been talking about it, this is not going to be something that's just the next 10, 12 weeks. This is going to be September as well. So, if it does become the idea that we are going to be trying to do more in person, it makes sense to have that order in, to have that going already, and give Mr. Miller's team enough time to really get those in time.
I know this is going to be a little awkward, or it won't be as smooth as we may like, but can we take a few moments to scroll through all of the chat comments to make sure we address them all? It is a community hearing. I want the community to feel like they're heard. I've just watched one person mention that the district doesn't want to invest in these plexiglass barriers, and that's why the kids are suffering academically. And another one implying that perhaps one of the board members is going to gain money through the sale of plexiglass. So I just think it's important we go through these chat really quickly and address their concerns and make sure that the community knows they're being heard.
I mean, so that's a good idea before I recap, because really we're up to the recap slide. So
Yeah, we're almost at the end. Yeah.
why don't we go through that, Mr. Dlemick? And again, remember, members of the public, we're going to go through each one. We're going to, some of them I'm sure are asking the same thing. So our answer might be, well, we answered that. I don't know if we'll have time to re-explain if we've already answered it in the presentation. And if there's any questions we cannot answer right now, I'm not sure, we'll certainly get that answer. So.
Okay, so I'm going to go right to the beginning of the chat and just go through straight through. Some of them are just comments. April 5th is day after Easter. Yes, that's the day we come back from spring break. For the IEP students, are you just referring to those already on the hybrid schedule? We will be looking at all our IEP students to see, where things might fit. I think we answered that earlier.
And people would, right, depending on, well, students are going to be invited back. If we don't go to if we don't go to in-person 4 days a week, no one's going to be forced to come in. So any special area students, IEP, ENL, they'll be invited to come back in.
Right. They don't have, the parents could choose not to do a 4-day option.
Correct.
Shouldn't those parents already have filled out survey with their choice? Not all parents filled out the survey. Is a student in EL in an ENL classroom but not designated ENL, will they be included in the start of the 4-day in person? No, because part of what we're looking at is trying to maintain the 6-foot distancing and the limited number of students that we can fit in a classroom. Just be added as the ENL student would be coming in 4 days a week, but it would not necessarily be a general education student. If you find that the at-risk students choose not to come back and there is room for other students to take that spot, how will that be decided? Can we fill something out saying that we would like our children to go back 4 days ASAP? I would say at this point in time, that's not a model we're looking at right away. If we're still going on those choices. Would at-risk students potentially be students with 504s or those who receive AIS services? Potentially.
Yes, potentially. Yep.
Yeah. This was Jake's question. Will individuals have to carry shields with them through the hallways? We did answer that one.
Good.
I don't know the next one. That's how does this impact the large class sizes and remote learning? We did talk about that as well. I'm very concerned with more time on the computer and yet another middle school schedule change. Yes, we are aware that that's a concern for many. Just curious, why are we starting back in school the day after having a 1-week break? Why wouldn't we go remote for 2 weeks like we did after winter break? So I guess we've had that conversation now too. There's an agreement. Many elementary students are already struggling and this kind of learning is not normal for kids and complicates parents' schedules. And now you want to assist students by placing them in front of screens longer. We all want our kids back, but we need to also think of their mental health. More screen time does not equate to better education. Okay, so that's commentary. Is there a maximum amount of students in a classroom at any one time if we go back to school 4 days a week for safety? There is not a maximum.
Right. It would just be based on each room, but if it went to, let's say, 3 feet, that's pretty much the regular distance between desks. So if we were if it was 3 feet and we have barriers, that's the safest that we can make it. But if we would be able to fit everyone.
Yeah. This is back to the you're going remote after break. I hear a lot of families are going away. How many will be responsible in quarantine when they come back? And do keep in mind that the quarantine rules for leaving a non-contiguous state are the same, except for those who have had the full vaccination and 2 weeks beyond. So you still need to, quarantine for 10 days unless test out within 4 days. If the kids are allowed to return 4 days a week and want to remain remote, would there be an option to attend the AP courses that are not currently offered remote?
So if you're not in the AP, if you haven't been in the AP courses all year, that's what it sounds like to me. They're saying
right.
You can't just join into an AP course or any of those full year.
I take it as somebody who's in an AP course who's in a hybrid model now, but they want to switch to remote.
Yeah,
Will
that's
they be
fine.
able to attend?
They'd be able to
class
zoom
remotely?
into the class.
Yeah,
Zimmer?
Many of our AP classes, that's happening right now anyway.
Right. Correct.
Who are doing both.
That's correct.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Mr. Zimmer.
if that was the question. I agree, this is mentally unhealthy and pointless for small children. That was the comment up about more screen time. Can you clarify, remote students in the middle school currently only attend live Zoom classes on the hybrid schedule? Yes, they would remain on their same schedule. We went over that. Correct, the question. So the middle school remote students will not be receiving the same 4 days of instruction that the hybrid students will be receiving. They will still only receive 3 days of synchronous instruction. Yes, that is accurate in some cases. Same would be for high school remote students. They would also be receiving 1 less day of instruction. The survey was deceiving for families that did not listen to the last Board of Education meeting. It made it sound like the entire schedule was guaranteed to change, and they did not have the context of the presentation of the slideshow, nor was there a comment section. So I think that there would be, I think that's where the hybrid schedule concern came from. I understand, Kendra, what you're saying, yes. And that's why I said, I think some parents chose they were happy with hybrid because they just didn't want the schedule to change. You are not fully conveying if high school and middle school remote students will get the same privilege of instruction that you are offering to hybrid students. I think we've gone through that now. Are we planning for possible changes that you mentioned coming this week if the regulations are relaxed and we can have students with barriers in 3 feet? Has district ordered barriers? How long until we receive? Do you have a plan? I see a lot of plans for high school and middle school, just adding more screen time for elementary school. That was at 6:42. So I think we answered
all that, yes.
Yeah. Just thinking about for the future, if school resumes for 4 days a week for in-person, what can happen for remote student to increase their Zoom live time? You know, that's certainly something that we'll continue to look at, but we do need to, right now, it stays the same.
Yes.
They said they are not adding more screen time for elementary school. They would keep that the same. That's true. If classes are forced to quarantine, would this mean 4 to 5 days of screen time? I don't know if you mean elementary school or high school, but essentially, yes.
Essentially, yes. If the class had to quarantine because of an exposure, a close contact, then yes, then they'd be zooming in. And again, a parent can, depending on the level, a parent, certainly can make a decision if a certain amount of time is too much time and not have their child on necessarily for 5 days straight all day long. We understand that.
Right. And I mean, that's kind of what happens right now, at least at the elementary school. If a classroom quarantines, it's pretty much 5 days of screen time or, 5 days of virtual instruction. Then Nicole says, I was referring to after school virtual bridge for elementary school that was listed on the slide. I'm sorry, I kind of lost track of.
So that if a student chose to go to a bridge program at the elementary level, it does add another hour of screen time. That's correct. But that's all correct. Optional. That's an optional program.
Yeah. With the possibility of students going in person 4 days a week, would Wednesday move to asynchronous as it is in other districts? At this time, no, although again, there may be some shifts in that schedule once we get things going, but right now we're planning to keep it, fairly similar to where we are right now. Okay, then someone answered, yes, the virtual bridge is not mandatory, only for kids who want extra help. It is a virtual program. If there's a significant change at grade level to move from remote to hybrid, how will that impact teacher change? For example, grade 3 has 2 teachers. If enough third graders go back, how will that be handled? Will the classes remain small or would they combine? That's going to depend on the individual situation, particular grade level, and what availability we have. They may, need, they may be spread out across the grade level rather than being able to keep their same teachers. Yeah, any other thoughts on that?
Mr. Freer, did you have any other thoughts on
That
that?
was the comment that I was making earlier.
Right.
If I have 90% of a remote class wants to come back to hybrid, and that brings that down to a very small number left in that remote class may have to combine with another remote class. So I have another teacher to teach the hybrid model.
Correct.
So that would be in an extreme situation where we
Right.
would have lots of changes. But I'm pretty confident in that most of my parents have been contacting me throughout the year, and we've been making those changes as the year goes on. So unless something drastically changes in the next few weeks where many want to change to a different model, it should not change the classroom teacher. But I need that to be clear that if it gets too small and I need another teacher, I may have to combine remote sections. But obviously we'll do everything in our power to not have that happen.
Right.
Thanks, Mr. Freer, for clearing that up.
Yeah. And, if we look at least at the survey results, it does appear that most families that are all remote want to be all remote for the rest of the school year. So no, right. We don't anticipate that that's going to become a big issue. Can you explain how elementary students will receive band and chorus instruction? Wednesday is not sufficient to meet with all these students, and the regulations haven't been eased for these performing groups, and the elementary school band chorus teachers have obligations for general music on Wednesdays in the A through F day schedule. Joel, I don't know. I don't know much about this one.
So the band schedule would, the rotating lessons would go back to a more traditional model, but that's going to take some planning time for Mrs. Adamak to redo that schedule. Yes, the band teacher does have some general music classes that meet on Wednesdays, so that will play a part in scheduling those classes. The hope is that with warmer weather coming, maybe we could get groups together, 12-foot distance, maybe outside. But those are all conversations that we need to have as we move forward. I think the biggest thing is, are we bringing more students into the building, or are we keeping, once that decision is made, then I will have conversations with Mrs. Adamak to try to give students as much band time, as much chorus time as we possibly can under the protocols that are in place. But yes, there would be changes.
All of these changes would potentially take place after spring break. That is approximately 11 weeks, the end of the school year, ? I'm sure that's meant as a commentary, but
Sure.
yes, that's true. And we've talked about that. How does this impact busing numbers? That will impact. It really will depend on how many parents choose to continue bringing their child into school versus put them on the bus. Mrs. McCulloch did mention last week that our buses are fairly empty most times of the day. It's very rare that we have more than like 12 students on a bus. So we do have capacity, even maintaining one student or family of students per seat in the buses. To be perfectly clear, hybrid student in the middle school will be receiving 4 days of in-person instruction and synchronous instruction on Wednesday for a total of 5 days of instruction. Remote students would only be receiving 3 days of instruction. How do you plan on education quality with this situation? I think we've addressed that several times.
It's not the same amount of time. We're aware of that, but there's, at this point in the year, that wouldn't be able to be corrected.
Will middle school be going back to a 9-period day? What does start and end time look like? Most districts that are getting kids back for more face-to-face learning are actually making the day shortened, which creates short class periods, impact instruction time. No, we are not planning to change back to a 9-period day. We're trying to minimize the amount of scheduling changes that we make. If we do that, we would have to redo the entire master schedule, which means your child would have a completely new schedule if we went to a 9-period day, and we are not, we don't want to do that. It also still does not make sense why elementary and high school have safely and successfully received physical education in person, but middle school. While I appreciate the work the coaches have done to run these classes virtually, I just don't understand why the middle school didn't figure out an in-person option. A lot of that was the size of the classrooms and spaces in the building. We needed to use the cafeteria in the middle school is very small. So we needed to use the gym space for our cafeteria, essentially for our lunch periods during the school day. And so that was a big part of it. And there were other considerations, again, mainly because of the size of the classrooms. If you cannot offer 4 days of instruction to remote only middle school students when offering 4 days with hybrid students, then that is completely unacceptable and illegal. Isn't it the responsibility of the district to ensure that all students receive an equal education? Why are the remote students' needs not being considered due to staffing issues? That is not the student's problem, that is the district's problem. You should stop saying that students will be getting 4 days of instruction. State the facts. Certain students will be getting 5 days of instruction while others will be getting 3. Next question, the barriers cost $30,000. Do you expect to use them next year, or is this money going to be spent for just the last 10 weeks of school? We did address
that.
Yeah. Would elementary students still be eating lunch in their classrooms if they start 4 days a week?
We addressed that, yes.
That is the current plan. Please consider remote after spring break. There are many people traveling and refusing to quarantine after.
Yep, we talked about the possibility of that. Yep.
And just kind of the other side of that, they understand that, but a full week of remote is a hardship for parents who work outside the home. Is the option of maintaining the status quo through the end of the year on the table?
I think that would, a number of board members have mentioned that, so.
Right. I guess nothing's really off the table right now.
No.
It's all kind of on the table. I understand that everyone wants kids to be back in school 4 days a week, but look how much parents are complaining every time a group has to quarantine. Now we're talking about basically double the amount of students in the building for twice the amount of time. It should be assumed that quarantines would happen a lot more often. How is constantly having to switch to 2 weeks remote better than just finishing out the year as is? Really, this change could have our kids in person less than what they are now, which was, again, the board kind of brought that up in a roundabout way. If barriers stay on desks, who is cleaning them? I think we talked about that our custodial staff would be cleaning them. What cleaning processes will be in place to accommodate all of these extra bodies with smaller spacing?
I mean, specific, I don't know if Mr. Miller, if you want to just address a little bit on the cleaning processes that we'll do if we brought more students in and if we have barriers.
We would institute a program of cleaning barriers on a regular basis. We are already looking at replacing some people that we did not have that had vacant positions. So we have more people to do cleaning and the sanitizing that we need to do to move forward with more students in the building.
Good evening. I have 5 children in this district, 2 in elementary, 2 in middle, and a senior. I do not understand why the last 8 to 9 weeks of school we would want to make these changes and not finish out the year as it is. We stand a better chance of having a more normal graduation if we don't have massive chance of more contamination. We get this far. Okay.
Appreciate the comment.
Yep. Well, I can understand and respect the opinion on making changes late in the year, but not thriving with the current method, and many are struggling and will continue to struggle and fall behind with working parents trying to do their best, but can only do so much. Were teachers surveyed about this potential change? We've been having conversations with teachers on and off. We did not send out a specific survey with the.
Right, but we've had conversations with the teachers and been in very close contact with the teacher unions and the presidents of the unions, so.
I do not think this should be based on what the parents think. It's right now that the reality is the year is almost over. Why disrupt what the children have become accustomed to? I am very concerned about changing things this late only to have more quarantine and less time in school. How will these affect future procedures with quarantine? Do you mean future as in, 3 weeks from now? We would be using the close contact model. You'd still need to quarantine for 10 if you have close contact with an infected person. What plans are being made for more students on the buses and social distance issues? How will this be handled? Again, we're working with our transportation department and they are looking at already routes and how many students will be on buses and maintaining distance the best that we are able to do. Again, we don't have full capacity, I don't think, on any of our routes currently. I'm not sure if Kathy is here, but so we do have some space and
Right, so if there's about 12 kids on a bus now, on a 60 passenger bus, so if we brought everyone in, it would be maybe a 24 on a 60 passenger bus. So there, and with the warmer weather coming, the windows would be open as much as possible. So, I mean, you would maintain, you'd be within the guidelines of all the guidance we've had on the buses. We would be maintaining and the distance with the students on the buses.
What plans are in place for next year to make up for all the lost classroom curriculum time this year? We'll be working from now till the end of the year and through the summer to reevaluate our curriculum maps. I mean, this is something that's affecting every school in America. So, we're looking at that, and it's certainly not fair to start in September and think, okay, we're just going to bring everybody up to speed in 1 month. We're going to be looking very closely at our standards and maps to figure out, where we can consolidate, where we can, slowly bring students up to where we want them and need them to be. Our kids have been suffering for a year. I will take whatever I can get for kids. This is not a waste to try to bring them back. Their mental health is most important. Thank you, Superintendent Bon Jovi, for your efforts and positivity. It is not a waste of time to bring back 4 days at this point. I'm not sure why this conversation and presentation is taking place when we cannot guarantee the same number of days of instruction for hybrid and remote students. You cannot give one group of students 5 days of instruction and the other. Certainly not a waste, the opportunity at the end of the year in a normal way. The gain is for our children. They are suffering academically and emotionally, putting their needs aside because we don't want to purchase plexiglass barriers does not make sense to me. Unless everyone is quarantined more than before, I think is kind of making that comment that if you have more people and we end up quarantined, we won't really be in person as much. The gain would be for my IEP student to have a chance to be successful. 2 days a week for an IEP student is simply not okay. Agree with Tara, mental health and sitting in front of a screen all day, some with siblings running around, parents working, etc., is not working. Sports are starting, spring is coming, kids will be outside playing and being kids. The CDC is claiming children are safest in schools. The survey did not give the option of choosing the current model. It did give the option if you're a hybrid student, if your student was as a hybrid student, if you were happy with the current hybrid model. That was one option to choose. And we did have people who chose that. CDC guidelines say that students are safest in school only when they're in their 5 mitigation, meaning the CDC's 5 mitigation strategies are strictly adhered to, including 6 feet social distancing. More about the remote only students. Thank you for reminding everyone that, yes, it was said we need to hear from the community. These are our children it's affecting. It is, if this increased exposure leads to more quarantining and intermittent school closures, students will end up spending more time on Zoom. It would also make it very difficult for teachers to plan for coherent instruction. I think a more specific survey with additional details should be sent out. The remote students seem to lose the most in this current model, and from a parent perspective, I'm not okay with that. Heather just said that 2 to 3 days of instruction is not acceptable, and that's why we need to move forward with this plan. Why is 2 to 3 acceptable for remote students? But it has been that way all year. I feel you will disrupt these children more by bringing them back and then having more quarantine time. Regents exam are on as of now. Only the 4 required ones. The others will not happen this year. Yeah, for March 16th is the Board of Regents meeting. Is there an option to just bring those students who are not thriving back to receive additional services to bring them up to grade level again? You know, there's not really a plan, and that is a little bit of a difficult yardstick to use. You know, when you're talking about the definition of thriving, what is that academically? Is that mentally, socially? But again, I guess all things are on the table right now.
Right.
And then someone else made that point, not thriving is relative to the student. One student may have good grades, but mentally, emotionally not thriving. I agree with Jan. We all want normal, but forcing it isn't what's best. These kids are doing a lot this year, and I understand that some kids are struggling, but it is changing everything on them, going to make it better, especially the kids who now have a new schedule and or teacher and have to catch the rest of their classes. That shouldn't be as much of an issue, because if they have a new teacher, it would be for the same subject, or, you know, it's just that you'd be essentially switching sections rather than switching to a whole new subject or course.
Right.
With more quarantines, it'll certainly cause more significant disruption. It seems more reasonable to wait for children to be eligible for vaccination and addressing the concern for the children IEP 504 ENL as needed. Prioritizing the most at-risk students to come back makes sense. Also, the district already committed to changing quarantine protocols, so the mass quarantines will decrease even with increased student body in the classrooms. However, I mean, just as a commentary on that, if we have more students in the school, the quarantines may happen more frequently and be more likely to impact students. I have read of numerous research studies supporting that 3 feet of social distancing is safe in K-12 schools as long as masks, ventilation, and sanitation are in place. Having less than 6 feet during lunch when masks are removed is not in line with all of their research. For example, Massachusetts had 3 feet as its guidelines safely since October, but during lunch when unmasked students in their state when in lunch, unmasked students sat in 6 feet apart in Massachusetts. While it is possible it will be fine, it is also possible sitting unmasked 3 feet apart will lead to in-school transmission, not just increasing quarantining. Some states like Illinois have therefore announced students distance 6 feet at lunch. Could staggered lunch periods or other creative scheduling be used for lunch to make 6 feet work for lunch? As a physician, I was initially hesitant about the reduction in distance overall, but after many hours of reading research and discussing with colleagues this week, lunch is my only remaining concern. But
Right, we share your concern about lunch, certainly.
yeah, and I think, you know, we try to maximize the amount of space between students if we can, but we are constrained. And I think we mentioned earlier too, you know, we'll try to move students into other spaces that are available so that they wouldn't all necessarily be in the cafeteria. But we just, right now, until we get a firm idea on numbers, we can't be sure where all we would be able to put them. I think it would be different if our kids were getting the vaccine, with some people resisting the vaccination in order to wait on scientific data regarding side effects, et cetera. No control of what people do in their free time. It's too risky. To keep things transparent, I'd like to know about the connection we have for the plexiglass dividers. No family members of the board or staff are out to make.
Oh, no,
No, not at all.
We were given some companies from other school districts where they believe you can get them pretty fast. That's what I meant.
Yeah. Making changes now doesn't follow a logical case study history. Is in-school instruction better? Yes. But would the change to total in-house instruction going to make a difference this far into the school year? Not at all. Let's poll the students. They're the ones who will have to sit behind the plexiglass. But as already stated by Mr. Bon Jovi, we would need to make a decision tonight in regards to barriers in order to get them in a timely manner.
It wouldn't have to be tonight, certainly. We've already kind of pushed that off. That it doesn't look like we're making any final decision tonight. I think we talked about putting together another survey and having some further discussion on Tuesday night, the 16th.
Please address legality of only offering 5 days of instruction to hybrid students and only 3 days to remote students at the middle school and high school level. Also create a survey where parents can give actual written feedback.
Right. I can't, I'm not an attorney. We're giving them as much as we can based on the choices they made. As far as, what was the second half of the question, Mrs. Dudley Lemick?
Creating a survey where people can give written feedback.
Right. The tough part with the written feedback is that there's, there would be a myriad of answers. We wouldn't be able to compile it all. It would take quite a long time to compile the answers from a written. It's just not feasible with the time frame that you have to have written answers in a survey. Time is of the essence, and it's not even just about time. Just to compile the answers of a survey where everything's written, that would take weeks possibly.
Consider a teacher survey as well, please. Can't the plexiglass order be canceled by a certain date? Get the order in with a deposit. I mean, certainly we'll be looking at all of those kinds of options. I have a senior, he has lost his social year already, disrupting his schedule, which he has become accustomed to now, makes no sense. I've spoken to all 5 of my children, 3rd, 5th, 7th, and 12th, and they have to go back now with the way the virus is and with all the changes. They have voiced that they stay home. It would be nice to hear how much it would be to increase the Zoom ability of the classrooms, maybe invest more money in that. Assistant superintendent mentioned it last, but said it would be cost prohibitive. What does that mean? Maybe that is another route. What we mentioned last week. So we have invested in different cameras for the desktops for teachers in all classrooms. What we were referring to last week is pretty sophisticated equipment, and we did get a quote on that. Thank you to a board member. And it was well over $100,000 to outfit 48 classrooms, which would outfit maybe the high school, but not other rooms. So, we are certainly looking at it. But as far as a short-term solution for the end of the year, we really wouldn't even get those in time to make much of a difference beyond, a month of school. Changing kids' schedules and teachers at this point of the school year, I feel will only disrupt these children more. Our student rep, it seems, also sent a message. I think that was a direct message to me. As a student rep, I know most of my classmates feel very concerned about coming back for 4 days a week because of it being such a big change for the end of the year. AP Bio, the kids are not allowed to Zoom in, so remote was not an option. If a hybrid student, this is clarifying our question from earlier. If a hybrid student goes all remote, will they be able to attend AP Bio via Zoom? It has not been an option up until now. I think we need to just look at that a little bit, and that might be more of a case-by-case basis. Bill?
I plan on investigating that statement tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll get to the bottom of that. Thank you.
Okay. Why are you not answering the legality question regarding the disparity in instruction?
I don't want to give the wrong answer. I think it's not illegal, but I'll have to get an answer.
If Wednesday went to asynchronous for hybrid, could it become a synchronous day for remote students to make it 4 days for both groups? Wednesday is already a synchronous day for remote students. Wednesday is a synchronous day for all students. It's remote, but it's synchronous remote for all students. So that's one of the 3 days. On the next survey, could you please ask parents if they would prefer to have the schedule remain the same as opposed to zooming in 2 additional days if the restrictions don't relax? Well, we'll try to hit as many options as we can, but sometimes if you string it out too much, then if we give too many different choices, then we may not come out with a clear answer, but that certainly would be up to the board to decide, what exactly we wanted to ask or what they, what feedback they would like to receive through a survey. I'm sorry if this has already been asked, but will remote get full instruction 4 days as well? We did respond to that. Their schedules would stay the same, similar to what they are now. That needs to be addressed for the instruction for hybrid middle school. It was changed at the beginning of the year due to complaints about hybrid schedules. It needs to be addressed for equity across both models. It seems remote kids are not being considered. You have plans to put up plexiglass for hybrid, but remote students can't get 4 days a week instruction. That's several questions about remote. More about remote. Has the cost of extra staff been calculated in the cost of the switch for this quarter? Custodial staff monitors. So as Mr. Bon Jovi mentioned.
Right, so it's not extra staff, it's just filling positions that we didn't need to fill because, for example, we weren't using the cafeteria. So we didn't need to refill cafeteria monitor positions that went vacant during the year for various reasons, but we'll just have to fill them. So that's what we meant by that. We had some vacant, we still had some vacant custodial positions. So these are not anything that they're still all budgeted for, just for vacant.
Camille, did you?
Yeah, I just want the comment with the remote versus in person. My concern as an educator and as a parent, just sitting here listening to the disparity between the two groups. And at some point in time, we're going to have all the kids who were hybrid and all the kids who were remote sitting in the same classroom. And my concern is that if one group is not getting the same as the other, like that's a big problem for me. Just hearing that even if we switch over, that it's still not going to be the same, the same learning experience for the kids. So I just think that's something that, like I said, we don't know when that point's going to be, but they're going to be sitting there, and the remote group shouldn't have less instruction than the hybrid. It's just not right. So I just think that's something that, regardless of what direction we go, like we need to figure out something better, because it's just, I just can't sit here with a good conscience saying that that's just okay. So it's really, something that's been bothering me.
And that concern is more at middle school, high school level, right? Not necessarily at the elementary school. So I just want to make sure we make that distinction, right? Elementary school still will get, remote or hybrid would get the same amount of instruction, right?
Correct.
It would be middle school, high school that we needed to look into that and consider that more.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hold on, I lost my place. The teachers should be surveyed. Individual conversations are not acceptable. every day my child is in person, they are learning significantly more. Again, this is my children. So in our instance, it is worth it for just 10 weeks of instruction. I know that isn't everyone's case, but just wanted to offer a different perspective. Has anyone looked into an outdoor space where 6 feet can be maintained? Maybe rent huge tents, so we're spending money on plastic dividers. There are all kinds of rules about tents too,
Yeah,
as far as building and maintaining and all of that. It's not,
right, we can't, right.
we have looked into that a little bit.
Can't order tents and have the classes in tents.
Can you do lunch or meal times outside?
That's certainly an option that we can look at. Mhm. You know, if the weather is
Right, definitely.
conducive. Mhm.
Yep.
I feel I must state this, students in remote only have 2.5 days live versus 4. They will fall further behind. There is no doubt of that. Middle school are not self-learners. Academic thriving is measurable. If parent, teacher feel emotional or social thriving is at risk, that's why we have psychologists and social workers in the buildings to do the evaluation. This may be something that should be considered when moving students back into the buildings. My daughter has been doing well with remote school. My concern is that the number of days of instruction between hybrid and remote students must be the same. My son has done well with the hybrid model educationally, sounds like. New Paltz School District has a survey with written feedback. Don't forget you work for the students, parents, taxpayers. Why do we keep brushing over the question about the amount of days for remote students?
I don't think we brushed over. I think we've addressed it and we concur. I concur with Mrs. Adoma. I'm not happy with that it's less amount of time, but, and we'll look into it, but I cannot make any promises that we'll be able to increase that for the remainder of the school year. The likelihood is that we won't be able to.
Can we readjust? Oh, sorry, wait, I missed one. My daughter would like to stay remote, but she should not get less of instruction. That's all remote. Can we readjust the statement about the amount of education and the student's choice? I think that must be again about choosing remote over hybrid.
Sarah, you're on mute.
You muted yourself, Sarah. Okay.
Okay, I got it. I think, I don't know how that happened exactly, but okay. Lost my place. If we can't, oh, so I'm not sure what all you heard. Can we readjust the statement about the amount of education and students' choice? Yes, it's a choice for my daughter to stay remote, but I don't think it's safe with the changing of classrooms and lack of sanitizing between students. She shouldn't get less of an education because of this. Let's see, this is about the surveys. If we can't leave written feedback, it would be much appreciated if we got a response from the Board of Ed and superintendent when sent. Many of us have sent emails that have gone unanswered. This is all incredibly unacceptable.
I would take exception to that. If you didn't get something answered, then you email me, but I answered every email that I received.
Those that weren't addressed to the superintendent, I answered also, or forward some of them on to the superintendent. So I believe, from what I saw, unless they had incorrect emails, because
Right.
one or two parents had my email incorrect, but then corrected it. I believe all those written answer questions to the superintendent or the Board of Education were answered.
Yes, I mean, and I could say, unless I got it at an odd time, I answered my emails within an hour. So, you know, something on the survey, on the next survey, certainly, and we'll put it together, Mr. Lemick, and I don't think we can do it here verbally. You know, we can put it together tomorrow. We can send it out to the administration, the board, just to make sure, get commentary, but we need to get that out. But we can make a, like a feedback email address. So at the bottom, there could be a link at the end of the survey where someone could, that's just possibly one way to do the feedback. But again, that will take and it's fine, but we can get a written response email through that survey. That's just one way to do it.
More about the versus hybrid. The district made remote instruction go from 5 days to 3 days back in November to make it equal to hybrid instruction. Now you have the audacity to propose that hybrid increases to 5 days at 3 days. This is so irrational and inconceivable that any Board of Ed member or the administration would think this is educationally sound or legal. Even if it's not illegal, it is. Has Ulster County received any funds from the federal government to make its schools safe to return to? Yeah, we have received money through the original CARES Act.
And they've been giving us, PPE supplies, so masks and gloves and sanitizers. So we've received those items, but there isn't monies available at this time for anything else like the barriers.
At the beginning, it said kindergarten started March 22nd. Is that definite or being proposed? I think.
Right. So at this point, I think this is all being proposed.
Right. My son has done well scholastically this year. However, he has struggled emotionally. He answered the survey himself. He would prefer more days of in-person. If it doesn't work for everyone, why do it? AP Bio is not the only course in the high school that is not offered to remote students. I've heard of other students who wanted to go remote, could not because of classes. Yes, we made that very clear from the beginning of the school year. I believe that was going to be a situation that would occur. April to June offers the least amount of scheduled time off. This is the best time to bring kids back, especially elementary. So there's some sense of consistency. I don't feel the board should make a decision until the legality of the remote model is clarified. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm sorry, but it's frustrating to hear more remote comments and just have them skipped over when clearly you have made many parents who are upset and concerned and should be heard. I was thinking this, I apologize. I'm saying that now, I apologize for that. I was thinking the same thing, Lisa, super frustrating. Thank you for continuing to support our students through this incredibly difficult time. Highland has done an amazing job with communication to families and admin, and teachers should be commended for working so hard. This is so complex.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was so complex, and it was helpful to understand some of the challenges that the school is up against. Every decision that is made makes half of us happy and the other half of us upset. It truly is a no-win. It is so disheartening seeing the various comments on each side from people I respect and care deeply about, knowing that decisions are going to make some happy and some upset. I really hope that everyone can reflect and see that. We are not each other's enemies. We all want what is best for our children. That means different things to different families. It is just no win in a lot of this. We must remember that. I am so sad that these choices even need to be made. I also hope everyone knows how hard your school staff are working to make everyone happy. Thank you again for that as well. Why won't you be able to adjust it? I'm assuming that's talking about remote versus hybrid. Part of the reason is just the complexity of the schedule. And as soon as we start to change sections, it creates changes for other students as well. And we were trying to minimize changes because we know that the middle school has gone through so many changes this year. We need promises. That doesn't fly. It is not equitable. I'm sorry, but I'm disappointed in the lack of urgency around this. So if all of our remote students need to go back just to get fair education, does that mean the school can handle everyone coming back?
Well, if if the distancing goes to 3 feet, we could fit everyone back, if that's the question.
Right. I agree, Holly. That was the previous comment. This is an incredibly difficult situation. Thank you to all the teachers, staff, and administrators for their hard work. While I can find one study showing plexiglass might help dilute infected air with clean air for someone on the clean side of the barrier, there is really a lack of research showing these are effective for preventing COVID in schools. They can concentrate infected air on the infected side as well without adequate ventilation. I also read one study showing that in schools in Georgia, where kids sat less than 3 feet with plexiglass barriers between them, there were multiple different cases of in-school transmission past the barriers. So they definitely can't replace masks, distancing. 3 feet masked, 6 feet unmasked is what we have data for. They are the least important safety measure. I don't even believe they are necessary to proceed if you cannot get them, and would spend that money figuring out how to keep 6 foot distancing at lunch instead if you legally have that option. Thank you so much for all your hard work at this. And I think that is the last comment.
Okay, thank you, Sarah, for reading all those.
Yes, no, thank you. That was, let's just go to the last slide, because this slide is kind of, a lot of it's moot, and I don't want to confuse everyone. So, Mr. Brown, we had a lot of great conversation tonight. And as I think we've said, we don't need to make a decision necessarily tonight. What I would suggest is that we will put together another survey. Because we do have some new options that we're talking about. The survey would be available from sometime Thursday till Monday at midnight. We can certainly put in a comment section. Again, I'll just say I can't guarantee that by Tuesday night, we will have been able to, we could read all the comments, but I don't know if we'd have time to kind of disseminate them and put them into categories, but we would certainly do our best to do that. And then we can kind of finalize this conversation Tuesday, depending on, what the public feels based on a new survey. That's not a problem.
Thank you, Mr. Bon Jovi. I think this is going to be one of the most difficult decisions any of us as a board member is going to have to make. I don't think for all of us. I mean, this is a unique situation. None of us have ever seen this. I feel for all the students. If board members have suggestions that might be able to establish some equity, what I'm hearing is, the remote students are being less given the opportunity than the hybrid students, but I don't know if, and I'm sure the board, the administrators have exhausted all avenues in trying to minimize that effect on those students. I would ask all board members now to reflect on all the information that's been given to them. The PowerPoint tonight, the survey, the upcoming survey, and if there's any productive comments that you can make back to the administrative staff, I'm sure they're welcome to hear that. And hopefully with that, maybe we can come to some resolution. But as some of the parents mentioned, this is a situation that we wish we weren't in. It's unfortunate we are. This board has to make the final consensus call of how we're going to move forward. Either we're going to stay status quo, or we're going to move to more in-person instruction. I don't think, my personal opinion, I don't believe that whatever the County Board of Health relaxes in the upcoming days is going to make much of a difference on how we are going to make our decision. It's a difficult decision, even with, the Regents exams not being part of the students' requirement for graduation. But everything brought together is going to be a tough decision. So let's leave it where if any of you have a final comment, please feel free to say it now, and then we'll end our meeting, and hopefully we can reflect over the weekend and come back on Tuesday and come to consensus and make a decision. Does anyone have any comments?
I just want to thank the board, certainly, and I want to thank the public. And I've said this, right, you gave us some, great questions, you gave some great comments, you gave some very tough questions and some tough criticism. Thank you. And I always say, and I mean it, all communication is good communication. As we've said a couple of times, whether we stay status quo or whether we make changes one way or the other, there's going to be some people who are happy with that decision and some people who are not happy with that decision. And I apologize for that, but it's just the reality that not everyone's going to be happy with whatever decision is made. But I appreciate the commentary, and we are going to take your comments to heart, and we'll, with the board, we'll make a decision on Tuesday.
I'll open it up to any of our administrators and directors if you want to, make any comments or react to any of the parent chat screen or any of the comments that the board has made this evening. If you feel you need to say something, go right ahead. We appreciate it.
Now, we have our work cut out for us as a board. And our senior administrative team, all our administrators and all our staff have worked well over 100% on this effort. And I can't thank them enough. I also want to thank the parents and guardians of our students out there for taking this active interest tonight and all along and supporting education and advocating for their students at home that attend our schools. It's refreshing to see. It doesn't make the work any easier, but it's refreshing to see that participation by the parents and guardians in our district. Thank you.
Just a quick comment just for myself. Definitely appreciate all the time, effort. I know it consumes a lot of my thoughts, and I'm sure many others as well. But just going back, in the effort of making small steps, I know part of the presentation proposed having kindergarten come back on the 22nd. Our board meeting is on the 16th. Is that something that the board would be open to discussing, just that small step at this point, since it didn't seem to be a concern with the current guidance as we have it, or even in getting, the building prepared or that portion of the building prepared for those students?
I'd be prepared to make that decision, Heather, and talk about that.
Agree.
Yep. Agree as well.
If you all agree with that.
I just think it provides some small steps for our district, not a step all at once, but a small step to try to get us moving forward a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Heather, on that scenario where we could potentially bring some of our vulnerable populations back in safely. I am all about that. I do appreciate all the transparency in this meeting. We read all the comments, positive, negative, and everything in between. It was a well-rounded discussion. I didn't hear anything per se that may change the direction that I will move in next Tuesday, but there is time for more information. I understand that. And we'll see what that information is. But I appreciate everyone's efforts all across the board. I thank you truly.
I just wanted to say, I know a lot of comments came up regarding the remote instruction. My family made the decision at the beginning of the year to go with remote instruction for I think probably the same reasons other families had. concern of safety for our children, for our family unit. From what I've seen in my children, yeah, it's not an ideal situation, but I have to say, I've been overwhelmingly impressed with the efforts of the teachers, their accessibility. Even though the classes aren't being taught every single day, I can't think of a single time that the teachers, whether morning, noon, night, sometimes past 11 o'clock at night, aren't willing to respond to a question. There's an immediacy and accessibility that was never, even in the regular days, wasn't present. So again, I know it's not ideal, and I know the situation, even for my own children, was not an ideal one. But I think given the constraints of what we're up against, I think all parties are really doing their admirable best, and my compliments to that. But that I'm saying that with recognition of those parents with the remote students, it's not ideal. It's not ideal by any means, but I do think the effort to make it as ideal as possible is there. And I think we probably have to strive for greater equity, but I don't think it's through an effort to neglect or negligence. I think the efforts are being made and the teachers are leading that front. That's my 2 cents.
Anyone else? Okay. Will we meet again next Tuesday on the 16th? There will be a survey going out. Hopefully, like I said earlier, we can all reflect on this meeting and all the information that's been given to us. I know this decision that we make is definitely going to, be one of the greater decisions that you've had to make in your career here on the board. I mean, it's not like voting if we want to purchase a new school bus. This affects the social, emotional, and educational well-being of all our students here. So it is a decision that we're all going to have different opinions. But I think when it's all said and done, we're all thinking in our own way for the good and welfare of our student body. So, and again, just kudos to our administrative staff for all they've been doing. This is hard times for our teaching staff, our support staff. It's unusual circumstances, and I think you're all pulling through with high grades, so I appreciate that. Does anyone else on the board have any comments?
Mr. Doma does, I think.
For the kindergartners, are we waiting till Tuesday? Or are we okay with giving a go ahead to do that?
I think the entire population, it seems like the kindergarten, we've said we have the space, and I think medically, these are the least likely to have transmissibility from what I've read. I don't know.
And Mr. Bon Jovi, I believe you had said at one time that those kindergarten students have, or their parents have been contacted, that there is a possibility of going 4 days with those students.
I'd have to quadruple check with Mr. Freer if he's still on. Have we spoken to all those kindergarten parents, Mr. Freer?
I know the kindergarten hybrid teachers have been in contact with parents about the possibility of this happening. The one concern would be we cannot take a lot out of the remote class, otherwise we don't meet the distancing. Right. So as long as I can accommodate a couple of more, the maximum in those classrooms is 16. And I think I have maybe 3 spaces left among the kindergarten classes to accommodate 3 more remote switches. So first come, first serve, I guess.
So do we need that decision to be made this evening? Or
no, I don't think we need to make the decision.
We can wait until Tuesday and make all those decisions.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. If no one else has any other questions, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Motion by Heather, second by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I appreciate everyone's time this evening, especially all our participants and all those chat discussion. I think it made it a little tougher for our decision, but I think it was well worth it that, like Mike had said, we're transparent and we read all those messages in. We're open and listening to everyone.